Hello, everyone. My name is Ray Volker. I'm with the Cincinnati and Hamilton County Public Library, and this is my talk for the Ohio IUG 2021 conference, Collection Analysis for $5 a month. Cheap. So you can find this talk and these notes here at this following address. The extra information will be linked along with the presentation. And then if you want to reach out to me, my emails are provided right here below, ray.volker@gmail.com and ray.volker@cincinnatilibrary.org. So let's go ahead and get started here. So I've broken this up into three different parts. So we're going to just kind of give a brief overview of the collection analysis platform. And then we will talk about the snapshot creation. So this is the overview of the workflow and automation involved in extracting and collecting the metadata from the ILS system. In this case, it's Sierra. And then we'll just provide a quick analysis. So maybe we'll do something that is, something that you might want to do on a normal basis, or something that you want to consider as part of an analysis. So let's just go ahead and get started here with the first part here, the collection analysis platform overview. So this is running on a piece of software called Datasette. So Datasette is created by Simon Willison. He created this tool for just to kind of create a quick and easy way to explore and publish data. And then Datasette is aimed at journalists, museum creators, archivists, local governments, basically anyone who has data. I think, we all have some form of data that we want to share. In this case, we have library metadata, and it's nice to be able to share that with colleagues and other library users, perhaps, or other interested parties. If you have researchers, this is a great tool to be able to just kind of give them, since they have access then to all the raw data that is associated with your record metadata, that type of thing. So I'm going to present some of these links to you here in the notes, and feel free to, kind of go back and browse through the notes and maybe go and look at some of these YouTube videos if you're interested in Datasette, because I think Simon does a really great job of explaining much better job of it than I can do, for sure. But he's given a number of presentations that I think are really worthwhile checking out. So this talk is actually a subset of a talk I gave not too long ago for the Pi Ohio conference called I Heart Datasette. So I just kind of laid out some of the things that I like about Datasette here, kind of enumerated them. So it's written in Python and it's available via pip. So that means that it's just easy to install if you're familiar with the Python environment, if you're familiar with working with data. This is really easy to kind of install and use. And then it's also once you've installed it and, if you've given it, turned it loose or turned, end users loose on this, it is really easy and intuitive to use. It's well documented. I think Simon has really done a great job of, just presenting all of the tools and the methods by which you would use Datasette in a really well-constructed document. It's got a useful and growing public or plugin library. So these things extend Datasette to make it even more useful. And I'll show one of those here coming up pretty soon. It has a built-in API, and the API uses SQL. So if you've ever used SQL, you'll be instantly familiar with how to use this data. And then, you can use the API, meaning that you can basically send it SQL requests. And this is completely safe because it's all on a read-only database. It's on an SQLite database that you can't modify or update in any way. So it's you don't have to worry about the SQL injections, that type of thing. And it's open source and supported developer. So Simon hosts weekly open office hours. So if you have questions about Datasette, or if you want to ask him any questions, he's usually free on Fridays, and I've actually scheduled a couple of sessions with him, and he's always been really helpful and just kind of, pointing me in the right direction and that type of thing. So, and then also there's this, the kind of the topic of this talk is the deployment. A little bit of just being able to quickly and, at very little to no cost, host this somewhere. So it's cheap, basically. So here is an overview of the collection analysis tool that we're currently running at the Cincinnati and Hamilton County Public Library. I'm calling it collection analysis. So here it is. And you can see there are a number of databases presented. So each of these right here is a particular snapshot. So the snapshots are done on a weekly basis, and they're collected into these SQLite databases, and then they're hosted here. We give this current week starting on Monday, and this is the previous week snapshot, and then we'll have then going forward basically like yearly snapshots created on the first Monday of each year. So right now we only have 2. But this is useful because if you want to, for instance, analyze what your data was from year to year, or compare even from this week to previous week, you can actually do that within this tool, and it's really nice. So one example might be looking at deleted bib records or deleted item records and that type of thing. So that way you can get a sense of how your data has changed between snapshots, for example. So let's go ahead and explore one of these. So let's just look at the current collection database. So you can see right away that there are a number of tables here. Each table is kind of listed by these names here, and then you can see the contents in terms of the columns of each of those tables. So the 2 big ones here are going to be bib record and item, which is item record. So those are basically the 2 snapshots that are going to contain the bulk of the data. The other ones are just sort of coming in from Sierra as sort of support tables to basically provide extra information that might be useful in an analysis. So let's go ahead and take a look at the bib record table. So you click on this, and then you're instantly provided with just this kind of just really quick view of the data. So you can see, there are many more rows than are actually being displayed here in this. You're only getting a subset of them to view initially. But the nice thing here is, if you wanted to start exploring this data a little bit, you've got these little, this gear icon here on the column names. So if you wanted to sort them ascending, descending, you can do that here. There's also this really nice feature. It's called facet by this. So if you click on that, you can actually then get a faceted list of the years for the publication years for in this instance. So, if you clicked on, for instance, 2014, you can then get a number of rows that match that. So you can just kind of quickly and easily sort of start exploring your data. And then you can also put other filters on here as well. So if you wanted to filter by publisher or something like that to further kind of work your way down to something that you're after in an analysis, you can kind of do that here easily. And then also, if you notice, there's also this link here at the top of every page. And I think it's important to mention here as well, the documentation for this data is available as well. And I thought it was kind of important to sort of define what each of the tables represent in terms of what the data is and what what is being presented to you as a user. So if you wanted to like look at the bib record table and the item table and see what the relationship was and see how to link the two, you can sort of easily do this here. And this is also nice it's been nice for me too, because like I've been able to just document some of the other other relationships in the data. For example, the location of items, the location code for items, and then actually linking that then to a branch. There's a relationship that defines that linkage, so that that way I can sort of easily go back and find that. So let's go back here, and we're going to talk about how to deploy Datasette. So your hosting options and ways to just host it somewhere. So Simon has actually created this really nice tool. It's called Publish, and I'm just mentioning it here just because I think it's important to just sort of see some of the options that you have available. But this Datasette Publish has tools like Heroku and Google Cloud in mind, where you can just kind of push very maybe small amounts of data up to a service like Heroku or Google Cloud. And these platforms are free or almost very little cost. So it's just nice if you have like maybe a smaller subset of data. The also in the same sort of I should mention that Simon has also very thoroughly documented some of these deployment fundamentals. So here's a link to that from what Simon provides about Datasette. But what I'm going to be showing here really quickly is just running Datasette on a full Linux server. It has a steep learning curve, but there's a lot more advantage to it, and you could do it inexpensively. Like I said, there are, there's lots of ways you can do this, but yeah, you can still do this inexpensively. And then also there are just tons of help pages out there and tutorials available. DigitalOcean is the platform that I really like for hosting these in this cloud service, and they call it like these virtual private servers, and they call them droplets. And each droplet, it's cheap. It's $5 a month. You get one CPU, 1 gigabyte of memory, 25 gigabytes of disk space, which is all plenty for Datasette. I should mention that, excuse me, typically when I've been doing these extracts when the data, it's usually about 5 gigabytes per snapshot. So if you wanted to host like 1 or 2 snapshots on this DigitalOcean platform, it can easily handle that. And then also, like I said, it's got great community support, lots of just guides and all sorts of things that are available for you. And I provided a step-by-step guide here as well, just to kind of set up a DigitalOcean droplet and then also hosting Datasette on that droplet. And you can check that out later. It's a bit long, but hopefully it's very thorough, and it kind of maybe, if you are new to this, it gives you sort of a jumping off point. So the second part of this talk, I'm going to talk about the collection snapshot creation. So this was originally done to support the task of automating data extraction from the ILS for Collection HQ. So Collection HQ is another collection analysis tool. It's obviously more expensive than this option I'm presenting here, but and I think this might actually be a nice sort of this could be like another like platform that you can consider using alongside maybe something like Collection HQ, for example. Or it could even replace it, perhaps. We're still using Collection HQ, but I think this tool has become very handy for doing other sort of analysis that Collection HQ might not be very great at doing. So you don't have to use Collection HQ obviously here. This is a standalone process, and this is a standalone tool. So, oh, and then I'm sorry. Yeah, let's talk about the scripting here, for example. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the all the scripts for collecting the data automatically are available here. So, and this is Sierra specific, but you know, I think, you know, if you're running something like Polaris, you know, I think that would you could kind of easily transition to that as well. So let's just go ahead and do a quick analysis here as like sort of the final thing that we're going to talk about. So I think it's always interesting to look at data in terms of aggregates. So like what I mean by that is by, you know, grouping things in terms of counts or sums, you can kind of get a very quick overview of, you know, what it is that your data consists of, or you might be able to spot errors very quickly, or, you know, things sort of jump out at you that, you know, that might not have been apparent if you're just kind of looking at single records or group, like smaller subsets of records, for example, in like a spreadsheet or something like that. So in this example, let's consider looking at item locations, location codes specifically, and how they're defined, and let's just consider how many items in each of those location codes. So let's go ahead and look at this query here in our Datasette instance. So this is looking at the last snapshot, and this is in the current collection, as you can see here. So this 4-line SQL statement just looks at the distinct location codes, and you can see, you know, right off the bat, it produces 2,300 of them roughly. So this isn't really very, you know, it's not really very useful in and of itself. This isn't really doing any aggregation yet. So let me go ahead and show you this query, which is just an expansion of it. It's a little bit longer, but we're just bringing in 2 other columns. So we're bringing in location name and branch name. This is kind of related to that document I showed earlier, and I linked you know, a real quick, you know, just made a comment in the SQL statement just concerning like how to, you know, how to do this relationship, since it is joining quite a few tables. You know, it looks a little hairy, but it's really just kind of, you know, if you've defined it well enough, you can just kind of pluck it back out again. So yeah, you know, we get sort of more detail here, but again, still doesn't really give us much, you know, information. So let me go ahead and expand it again. And then now we're bringing in this this aggregate function count. So now we're able to count the number of items in each of those locations, those location codes. So, you know, right off the bat, you can start to see here, you know, like things start to jump out at you. If, you know, you've got one item in a location code, that might be an issue. Or, you know, if you want to look at, you know, things that, you know, are clearly maybe not supposed to be used, but there are, you know, items in them. We had this issue where we had a window location, but we didn't want, you know, items to be in that location. So, you know, that was one of those things that, like, just, you know, you could sort of see right away when scrolling through the list here. So the nice thing too is with Datasette, let me go ahead and expand this one more time. So I've introduced this other concept, and here is sort of the this API usage where you can actually feed a query, like another query almost. So if you wanted to produce this as like a report, and you wanted to, for instance, link to the items that are in this report, you can actually create this SQL statement and actually just kind of use this thing called a parameter, basically, in your SQL statement. So that way you can go back and include it into your query. So right here, I'm actually just kind of feeding it the location code that is associated with that row. So it's just nice for, if you wanted to share it with a colleague or someone who is responsible for a location perhaps, or someone who wanted to do some extra cataloging. I mentioned plugins with Datasette earlier, and one plugin that's really handy, especially if you're doing sort of analyses and you want to do like some sort of visualization really quickly. I found this useful for if you want to just kind of, play around with some data and maybe like think about how you want to visualize it. Vega is a really great tool that you can install along with Datasette as a plugin. So I had actually shared this with I think it was the Code for Lib forum, and someone came back rather quickly and he actually sent me this query, which looks a little bit hairy, I think, but it's really not that terrible. It's actually, just kind of breaking up the published year that I had showed earlier on the bib records, and it breaks it up into decades. So you get this kind of really sort of quick visualization just right here, based on this. This is your bibliographic record data publication year. Just kind of broken up into counts of how many titles have that publication year. So then it was just kind of a really interesting, and this user actually, or this person came up and just kind of came up with this query and sent it to me as a link. It was just kind of one of those like, oh, this is exactly how I think Datasette is intended to be used, to be able to share data really quickly. And then I mentioned the name parameters. So let's just kind of show that really quickly here again, just to kind of give you a sense of what I mean by that. It's just a way to quickly place a parameter into a query. So here's an example where we're just searching for subjects, index subjects. So you can go and you can feed a subject into a query, and you can then present, if you wanted to give this query to someone, and they could actually just kind of fill this box in themselves and then run the query, and then it'll supply the SQL statement with with this name parameter. So in this case, we're looking for dystopias, and then we're also, this is kind of interesting too, because we're also pulling in another aggregation associated with the items that share that bibliographic record number. So these will be like a sum of the checkout. So you can actually look at some of your most popular items, for example, that share that index subject, or that subject heading. So you can sort of see. And then also, like I'd shown earlier too, you can actually present a link in this output as well. So if you wanted to link to, yeah, but anyway, if you wanted to link to a catalog record, you can do that here. I don't know why it's not working in this instance, but another really great feature too is the option of canned queries. So it's very much sort of like the idea of the parameter, but you can sort of bake this into Datasette when you start it, so that you can kind of create these maybe more traditional looking REST APIs. So in this case, this one is actually looking up item and bib data based on a barcode, for example. So if you wanted to use this as a data source, for example, you could do that with something like this canned query. And I can show you this example here of this being run. So you could just supply it with this specific barcode, and then you can get this data out. So, and I mentioned using this as a data source. So, and if you noticed, as I've been sort of presenting these, you can actually get these as, you can get the output as CSV or JSON. And the CSV is kind of nice because it just is it's just a very flat file. Let me see if I can open this a new tab here. just to be able to sort of more clearly see it. But as you can just sort of see, it's it's just basically like it's just CSV data. So if you had another tool that you wanted to use to kind of populate it, or if you wanted to if you had a list that you produced and you wanted to visualize it, you can kind of more easily do it. Just kind of use it using Datasette as a data source. So hopefully that was useful. I know that was it's kind of a quick, really brief overview, and it was, there's a lot of complicated pieces there, but I think the potential here for this piece of software is really kind of, I think, just amazing for libraries, especially like peer libraries who maybe want to share data sets or compare their collection to another institution's collection. So I mean, I kind of my hope is that this type of thing catches on, or at least providing a method for just kind of being able to quickly download bulk data, raw bulk data from like another peer, or like a library that you're interested in terms of like for doing research. We had actually spoken to a researcher who was interested in looking at some of our like a little bit of like the circulation history. So we do get count with like in this data provides sums of checkouts, so you get like a little bit of aggregation, so you could compare from year to year, maybe like what our our circulation for titles might be, and that type of thing. So if you want, I think the researcher was interested in children's information, so that would be maybe a nice way for them to look at that data. But yeah, please feel free, contact me if you have any more questions. I'd love to talk about this stuff, obviously. So, if anyone is interested in discussing it further, please, feel free to reach out. And thank you. And hopefully see you soon. Bye.